When you set your standards or you set your boundaries, people are going to say, oh, you think you're all that.
Show people your boundaries. So if you tell somebody, hey, you can't talk to me like that, and yet they continue to talk to you like that, and you keep repeating, but you can't talk to me like that. I'm telling you my boundaries, you're crossing my boundaries. Those are not boundaries. Boundaries are not things we verbalize. Boundaries are things we show. So if you tell somebody, hey, if you do that again, I'm not going to speak to you, or we're going to break up, or I'm going to leave the relationship, and you stay, that's not a boundary. That's just you talking. We show people how to treat us. We show people our boundaries. I had somebody, actually this was a friend, and her boss would call her all the time. She would say, I keep telling him to not call me at past 8 p.m. at night, but he still calls me, and he calls me on the weekends. And she said, he says he won't do it, but he keeps doing it. She had like a pretty decent relationship with her boss. I said, is he listening to you? She said, no. I said, do you answer the phone when he calls you past 8 p.m.? She said, yes. Stop answering the phone. You can't say, don't do this. This is the problem when we tell people these are our boundaries and I need you to respect them. They're going to do what they're used to doing. And until you do something to show them, I'm not okay with this, they will keep doing it.
You just got to set boundaries for yourself and be like, yo, I'm not going to be a people pleaser in any way, shape, or form. And man, honestly, if my boundaries, cause somebody to feel offended, then that's the whole point of having the boundary in the first place. Like, you're upset with me because I'm placing a boundary for my peace of mind? Yeah. Nah, I don't need you in my life to begin with.
Setting healthy boundaries is not about you keeping other people out. If someone crosses your line in the sand, it's because you never made your line deep enough. No one can ever go further with you than you've given them permission to go. So as hard and as difficult as it is to hear, because this was hard for me to hear when I had to admit it to myself, that the way people treated me was based on how I trained them to treat me. So I have to say it to you. You've trained people to treat you the way they're treating you. So if people are crossing your boundaries because they didn't know it was there. If people call you at odd hours of night, it's because you keep answering. If people ask you to do beyond what you're able to do, it's because you keep saying yes. If people don't ever think you need rest, it's because you act like you don't need rest.
I love you, but I don't trust you. This is what my pastor preached about today, and I came with notes to share with you guys what I learned. The pastor started off by saying that you have to heal what's in your heart, and if you don't heal what's in your heart, that's going to turn into hate, and then you're going to end up being like the person who ended up hurting you in the first place. How many of us know that trust is something that takes time to just earn, and within seconds it can be destroyed? The pastor goes on to say how forgiveness is a release, but healing is a process, and he uses a broken arm with this analogy, right? So when we break our arm, what happens? We put our arm in a cast. And with that, there's a boundary in place that allows us limited movement with our arm. So it's the same concept with your broken heart. You need to put a boundary in place to allow time to heal from the hurt. Pastor said it, you're trying to put a band-aid on a bullet wound. It doesn't work that way. Healthy relationships in your life, whether that's with your family, your friends, or a partner, stem from healthy boundaries, not quick fixes. And what does God say? Above all else, guard your heart. And I wrote here that the pastor said, healthy boundaries keep your heart pure and your head sane. You see, the pastor said in Matthew 18, verses 15 through 17, that God calls us to bring the hurt forward to those that hurt us. There's steps in place when somebody hurts you as a follower of Christ that you need to do in order to try shed light to the hurt that you have. Everybody knows why they hurt you. It's your job to bring it to their attention. However, the pastor said, when you bring it to their attention, you are also called to forgive. But just because you forgive, you don't have to tolerate it. Jesus didn't say that we have to accept these people into our lives. He said we have to forgive them. God is a God of boundaries. You have to have healthy boundaries in place in your life with every relationship you come across with. The pastor said, our God is a God of love, but he's also a God of wrath. And neither can coexist without one another. Our God is a God of boundaries. So to summarize what the pastor said, because he really honed in on Matthew 18, verses 15 through 17, if you tell someone why they hurt you, and they hear you, and they apologize, and they hold accountability, you gained a brother in Christ. Now, Even if you come to somebody and you did what God called you to do, and they don't apologize and they don't hold accountability, it is still your responsibility to forgive them. However, God doesn't call us to tolerate them. Remember, guys, forgiveness is a release, but healing is a process.
Boundaries, I always say, is a bit like when you're ordering in a restaurant. If they ask you what are your allergies, you have to tell them. You have to tell them what your allergies are. And if they don't have anything that caters to you, you don't scream at the waitress. You simply go to another restaurant. Where people get it wrong is that they think this is my boundaries. You have to listen to me. I don't want you going out. I don't want you to do this. But they keep enforcing them, getting more and more toxic, instead of thinking, well, if this person doesn't want to change, I should just leave. The boundaries, the end goal is with me, not with the person changing. So it's a very tricky one, but it's one that if you can just set them early, you'll filter out the wrong people anyway, and throughout the relationship you'll be in line with each other's boundaries.
There has to be boundaries in relationships when it comes to communication and how we're going to resolve stuff. It just can't be a free-for-all. My wife 25 years ago, because the first 5 years for us were hard. Boundary. You cannot talk to me in that tone. Boundary. I will no longer tolerate you shutting down on me for 3 days. Boundary. I will no longer tolerate you fighting me the way you're fighting me. Boundary. If it means that we have to separate, if it means that we got to call a timeout on this relationship so that we can establish healthy boundaries, so be it. Because if there are no boundaries, there can be no accountability.
Just because someone has a negative reaction to your boundaries doesn't mean you did it wrong. Some people will always be threatened by your boundaries because it makes you a whole lot harder to control and manipulate, doesn't it? And isn't it funny how you're called immature and rude when you leave a conversation because they were yelling at you or calling you stupid or being blatantly disrespectful? And yet somehow it's your boundaries that caused the problem. Somehow you're giving up on them or not loving them. Yeah, or it was because you knew you didn't deserve to be yelled at or belittled. The truth is, some people will never be capable of the self-reflection, personal accountability, and emotional maturity necessary for a safe, healthy relationship. Your job is to make sure you can recognize when they try to convince you that you're the problem for asking for the bare minimum levels of respect and kindness even during a conflict. Because it seems to me that healthy boundaries are only a threat to unhealthy people. What do you think? Agree or disagree?
Boundaries are attractive. Boundaries are magnetic. The more successful you become, the more boundaries you will set. The more boundaries you will have because you will guard your energy more because your time becomes more valuable. So for everything I'm sharing today, realize being in your own frame is key to transformation. It's the key. If you want to transform your life, then what you want to do is you want to focus more on being present to the moment, in your own frame, leading. Stop abandoning yourself. Learn how to set boundaries more. And as you do this, this will change everything about you.
Boundaries are not to control other people's actions towards you. They're to control your own actions based on what others do to you.
Let's talk about what's not disrespect. Respecting your boundaries, that's not disrespectful. Not letting people walk all over you, that's not disrespectful. Having a backbone and standing up to people, that's not disrespectful. Valuing yourself, your worth, your time, your energy, that's not disrespectful. Limiting access to people that no longer deserve you, that's not disrespectful. I say all of this because when I decided to start establishing boundaries in a lot of my unhealthy relationships in the past, whether that was at work, family, friends, school, or romantic partners, I was labeled as mean and I was told, oh, you're not the same, you've changed, you're acting brand new, you're acting different. Yeah, I am, because why do I want to let you disrespect me? That's stupid. And this is why I believe in telling people how you feel. Of course, exercise situational awareness. And if you have to put it on your to-do list for later, make sure you actually handle it later because people will do to you what you allow them to. A lot of times we brush stuff off and we push things to the side thinking that if we just let it slide, they won't do it again. Sometimes you think if you just tell someone nicely or politely, they won't do it again. No, with some people, you just have to be very direct. And if they try to cross that line again, you just got to cut them off. Per my last email is not disrespectful because if you were smart enough to read, you would know that I said this 30 minutes ago. That's not hostile. That's not you overreacting. That's you showing people that they should pay attention because how many times have you said this? People think that we're supposed to constantly repeat ourselves. If you don't feel like it, you don't have to. Telling somebody don't talk to me that way, that's not being disrespectful. Telling someone that they need to be held accountable for their actions, that's not disrespectful. Returning the same energy that somebody gave to you first, that's not disrespectful. And a lot of people will convince you that you're being disrespectful because they're not used to you standing up for yourself. Your body even plays tricks on you sometimes, because I know for me, when I first started establishing boundaries, I would get cold sweats, I would have heart palpitations, I would literally internally be freaking out, because any time that I tried to establish a boundary with a toxic person that showed me that they were toxic, they always had a very negative reaction. And silly little old me would continue to try to get them to respect my boundaries for extensive periods of time where it was just a waste because they never did, and I just needed to cut them off. One good getting them together, and if they don't get it, never speak to them again. And sometimes that one time that you get them together, that needs to be the last time that you speak to them. Because if you allow people to disrespect you, you're not respecting yourself. In fact, you are disrespecting yourself by sitting through someone else's disrespect that you do not deserve. Again, time, place, situational awareness, all of those play a factor in these situations. But it is your responsibility to teach people how to treat you. And the only way you can really do that is if you know how to treat yourself. And for a lot of us, that takes copious amounts of life lessons. I mean, I have had to reach some very low lows in order to treat myself better so that I would know what I would not be allowing in my life. But standing up for yourself, that's not disrespectful. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
A queen does not settle or compromise. I mean, of course, we always have to compromise a little bit in life because that's just how it is, especially in relationships. But when she has certain boundaries and she has certain expectations for people in her life and they are simply disrespecting it and not willing to meet it, a queen will never stay. You will never ever be in a relationship with a true queen while you're disrespecting her, because she will leave. She will rather be alone. She will rather be crying and lonely than being bad company. That's how true she is to herself and to her boundaries.
What are actions you can take today to prioritize yourself? Boundaries. You can start with boundaries. That's one thing. I watched a video the other day and it talks about how people celebrate peace, but they don't often talk about the price of peace. That the price of peace comes with boundaries, and those boundaries often ruffle the wrong feathers, right? I believe that setting boundaries, for example, I have a boundary. My boundary is when I was president and CEO of this nonprofit, hey employees, we're not working on weekends. We're not working on weekends. The weekend is for me, my man. That's the weekend, right?
How to set boundaries with a man. If you like being disrespected, go ahead and scroll away. If not, buckle up. Step number 1, do not wait for the situation to occur before you address the situation. What do I mean by that? You need to do a good job of anticipating problems before they become problems. How do you anticipate problems? You listen to what people are saying, and when you start getting a better understanding of their personality, you're able to predict possible outcomes and situations that could occur based on the type of person they are. Step 2, you also need to be self-aware and address situations that you know bother you before they start bothering you. Why do I say that? Well, we all have pet peeves. We all have things unique to us that it's like, okay, yeah, this might bother the regular person, but this one irks me to no end. This one will get me to jump off a bridge. This one is done. It's not just enough to talk about those things and tell them that it bothers you. You need to make it clear this is like a non-starter. This is not something that's like, oh, if it happens, I'll forgive you or whatever. You need to make it clear to them what your response will be when they cross that boundary. They need to understand why something bothers you, how it would bother you, and what your reaction will be if that boundary is crossed. Because they need to be clear on, okay, this is the line I shouldn't cross. This is why I shouldn't cross that line. If I do cross that line, this will be the reaction or response I get.
But are you setting boundaries or building walls? Healthy boundaries lead to increased self-esteem, comfort and happiness, reduced stress and anxiety, and better relationships. But only if you're actually setting boundaries and not putting up barricades. Ghosting, blocking people, issuing rigid demands, making totally inflexible rules about how people should or shouldn't behave, hanging up or storming out instead of continuing a difficult conversation or asking for space. While these things will unfortunately sometimes be necessary, and here's a note on that, they are not boundaries, they're walls. Here's how to tell the difference. Walls are rigid, where boundaries are flexible, including a willingness to discuss, collaborate, and compromise. Walls are about issuing blame, where boundaries are about taking responsibility. Walls offer a place to hide, where boundaries allow you to be seen. And walls are self-focused, sometimes even selfish, where boundaries acknowledge the needs of others. The key distinction is this. Walls are built from a place of fear and shame. They are defensive measures to keep the world out. And as a result, building walls can lead to loneliness, isolation, disconnection, resentment, shame, more fear, and therefore even more walls. Boundaries, conversely, are created from a place of love, compassion, empathy, and belonging. They are not rules or orders. Instead, they're a way of saying, I see you, I hear you, I respect you, and I respect myself. Here's how you can do the same. So have a think about the boundaries you set in your life. Are they healthy, respectful, inclusive, empowering, or are they walls?
Strengthen your boundaries, not your guard, not your walls, right? Because being boundaried is not the same thing as being guarded. A boundaried person, the main difference is a boundaried person keeps their heart open to new connections, to new possibilities, to new people, to new places, and a guarded person keeps their heart closed. A boundaried person is going to be able to identify their needs and vocalize their needs. And if the people around them aren't able to meet their needs, they have enough self-esteem to meet those needs elsewhere, right? Versus a guarded person is going to resent people who can't meet their needs and like create all these belief systems and belief patterns like I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, and all of these things. A boundaried person does not internalize how other people treat them. We can't actually control how other people treat us, but we can control what we're willing to accept and how good we're being to ourselves.
I don't play about my boundaries. Those are real necessary. I don't think we realize how much courage it takes and how much confidence it takes to enforce your boundaries. Because it's easy to move them a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move it like an inch.
Yep.
Society teaches us to be like joyful and smile and kind and be thankful, and it's okay. Like if it's like a slight offense, it's not that bad. But then that bad gets to be the next line, and then the next line, and the next line, and then before you know it, all those little micro movements of your boundaries are like 90 miles away from where your original boundary was. They were small.
Yeah.
And then I looked up and I was like, where the heck am I?
Yeah.
And how did I end up isolated alone? Oh, you have me entirely messed up.
Right.
Because God is still working on me. Well, how did I get here?
Yeah.
All my boundaries had been crossed. But I didn't even notice as they were being moved.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were small, and I was like, okay, they can't be that bad.
Or
Or maybe
you
I'm
think,
being sensitive.
As a
Or-
woman, I'm being sensitive.
Or it's that time of the month, and then I look back and I'm like, no.
No.
It's
Yeah.
this way or no way. It's
Yeah.
you adhere to my boundaries.
Yeah.
Or it's no way at all.
I distance myself from a lot of people that are not willing to meet my boundaries, not willing to meet my standards. Even family members. Some family members, I was like, okay, you are not willing to respect me, then leave me alone. I'm not asking for crazy things, I'm asking for respect.
If someone was drowning, I will throw you a life raft, but if you don't want to get in, that's not my problem. If you want to drown, I'm going to let you drown. Simple as that. Because the more you try to help people, you will realize some people do not want to be helped. Some people would rather drown. As time went on, I realized not my responsibility. I throw you a life raft, you don't want to get in, I am not jumping in to drown with you.